Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Jenkins, and I'm the publisher at GSA Business Report here in the upstate of South Carolina. We fold up under an umbrella of business publications called SCBIZ. In the Low Country, you know us as the Charleston Regional Business Journal, and in the Midlands, we are the Columbia Regional Business Report. We also publish a quarterly business magazine simply called SCBIZ. Welcome to another episode of Coping with COVID. This is the video series where we discuss the impact the coronavirus is having on our lives, both at home and at work. Today, we will explore the economic impact the pandemic has had on South Carolina. I'll be talking with three experts, certainly qualified for the conversation. Dan Ellzey, Executive Director at SCBIZtv, which is the Department of Employment and Workforce, and South Carolina's Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Evette, will be joining me shortly. And in just a couple minutes, John Lummus, the CEO at the Upstate SC Alliance, will also provide an update on what things look like right now in South Carolina's 10-county upstate. But before we get to those conversations, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our presenting sponsor for this event, Quality Business Solutions, or QBS. QBS provides outsourced payroll, HR, and back-office solutions to companies across the country, really. David Evette is the president and CEO at QBS. Let's take a moment to hear from David. We'll be right back.
The key to any successful business is for employers to focus on the activities that have a direct impact on growth and profitability. That's why we founded QBS 20 years ago, to remove the burden of back-office administrative tasks like payroll, HR, and benefits administration, freeing business owners up to focus on what they do best, lead and grow the business. At QBS, we listen to you, our client. We take the time to uncover any current or previous problems and learn how we can help you achieve your organizational goals. Then we provide a customized bundle of services to meet your exact needs. Why? Because your success is our number one priority. Find out how QBS can help your company achieve its goals. Visit our website at qualitybsolutions.net and contact us today.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks, David. Thanks to Quality Business Solutions for presenting today's conversation. Greenville has become one of the most thriving economic cities in the Southeast. At least it was before the pandemic. And the upstate has become one of the strongest, most progressive manufacturing sectors in the country. The distribution, logistics, and technology industries are also increasingly prominent. We need to reignite South Carolina's economy. Might manufacturing be that spark? If so, the upstate could be one of the keys to recovery. John Lummus, the CEO at Upstate SC Alliance, has a unique perspective on the subject, and he's agreed to share that with us today. John, take it away.
South Carolina has been severely impacted by COVID-19, but we're already rebounding faster than the nation, due in large part to the strength of our manufacturing sector. Our state is home to 3,500 manufacturers, and most of them remained operational during the country's coronavirus shutdown. And our state leaders reopened our economy earlier than most other states in the country. Manufacturing is the backbone of the state's economy, with 260,000 employed statewide in manufacturing jobs, and more than 112,000 of those work within the upstate. For that reason, let's talk about the manufacturing sector and the opportunities it presents. At the Upstate Alliance, our mission is to recruit new business to the upstate region. We focus on automotive, aerospace, engineered materials, life sciences, and food and beverage. So why manufacturing? Manufacturing jobs typically pay higher wages with average compensation of $72,000 per year. They also provide strong benefits and are a multiplier in the economy for creating additional jobs. In the first half of 2020, the upstate saw 16 project announcements totaling $107 million in capital investment and 507 jobs. Numbers lower than in 2019, but still good signs given the world's uncertainty. It's also worth noting that announcements usually slow down in election years. There are additional signs for optimism. We've continued to receive new project inquiries and prospect visits since the onset of COVID this spring. As we continue to look to the future, the upstate is poised to benefit for many reasons. First, the Upstate's location and transportation assets remain strong. Thanks to GSP International Airport, the Inland Port Greer, and access to numerous highways. Our region is at the heart of a growing southeastern corridor, and we can reach 100 million people within a one-day drive. Second, site selectors and real estate leaders have identified our community as a strong contender as businesses choose future locations. In fact, Greenville was included as one of 11 cities likely to receive investment in a recent report by the Site Selectors Guild. And a CBRE research report speculates that inland hub markets like Greenville-Spartanburg will see more warehousing and fulfillment operations to support e-commerce growth. Plus, we see great potential as companies discuss realigning their supply chains to be closer to their customers and less vulnerable to global disruptions. This is especially true in the growing food and beverage industry. The state's manufacturers also present many possibilities for individuals who have become unemployed or who may be underemployed to connect with high-demand technical careers. This time of change represents an opportunity for many individuals to skill up and move up. GSA has put together a great program today, and shortly we will hear more on these ideas from the Lieutenant Governor and the Executive Director of SCDO. We look forward to coming out of the COVID-19 crisis stronger than ever, and we feel that the upstate manufacturing economy and associated opportunities will ignite our continued growth.
Thank you for that info, John. I appreciate you being a part of today's event and sharing your unique insight. John and his very talented staff at the Upstate Alliance do good work. We're fortunate to have that team promoting the Upstate as a place to live and do business, and they do so to the world, really. Now let's continue our conversation about how the pandemic is impacting our lives, specifically South Carolina's struggling economy. Joining me today are two very qualified people to have this conversation. Dan Ellzey, who is the Executive Director of SCDO, the Department of Employment and Workforce, and our very own Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Evette. Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Ellzey, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be
Good
here.
to have you guys here. I cannot imagine how challenging your schedule must be, and the fact that you had a little bit of time to spend with us, our viewers are going to appreciate it, so thanks. Dan, you come over from Columbia today?
I did, straight up the interstate.
Yeah? And Lieutenant Governor, were you in town already?
I was in the upstate already today.
Okay, good. Well, we didn't take too much of your time, I hope. All right, let's talk about the economy. Before we get into it, though, I do want to provide some statistics just to kind of set the stage. Things are still rough. Things are still extremely challenging, even though we do have some rays of hope that are trying to peek through. But I want to set the stage with some statistics. Last week, a few business days ago, the state's epidemiologist, which is a hard word to say, Dr. Linda Bell. Now, for those of you who may not know what an epidemiologist is, and I didn't until a few weeks ago, but they basically investigate disease and its impact on people. I'm oversimplifying, but in a nutshell, kind of like a disease doctor, so to speak. So South Carolina's disease doctor, Linda Bell, came out with a couple stats worth sharing. South Carolina ranks 6th in the country in the rate of COVID cases per 100,000 people. That is not a good stat to be in the top 10. I think we have improved a little bit since in the last few days. 45 of 46 counties over the last couple weeks in South Carolina have reported an uptick in coronavirus cases. Also not a good statistic, even though we're testing way more than we ever have, and so I understand that. Some info out of DHEC, which was just reported this morning. Yesterday, 1,105 confirmed cases. The day before that, it was 1,100 exactly. Comparatively, those are two good numbers compared to what we have been seeing. Hate to say that, but it is true. Yesterday, 27 confirmed deaths, about that same amount the day before. Pandemic to date, so to speak, 93,000 coronavirus cases, and about 1,800 people have succumbed to the disease. That's where we are today. Some people say these statistics are overblown. Some say that they have been over-sensationalized by the media. Some say I don't need to wear a mask. It's not as bad as the flu. It's fake news. Lieutenant Governor, what do you say?
Well, I would say that we really should listen to our experts. You know, I've been around and talked with Dr. Bell. The governor has been very straightforward in saying that we need to wear masks to protect each other. I know personally people who have it, some who say the symptoms are very mild, to one who was in intensive care for 4 weeks. And so I think it's an unpredictable virus. We keep hearing that. We were with Dr. Burke. She was here in the state of South Carolina and talked about how masks do help. When masks are used properly, masks do help. They've seen it in other states. And what we want to do with masks is we want to protect those around us who may have underlying conditions. Some people may have underlying conditions that they don't even know about.
That's right. Yeah, I hear you. Dan, what do you think?
Well, I completely agree with the Lieutenant Governor. I take it seriously. I think it's a serious disease, and more importantly, the governor takes it very seriously. When this first thing started, he started holding daily, 7 days a week, briefings with all the agency heads and other people, and he got more data on science and statistics and the economy and health and as much information as you possibly could to look at it, analyzed it. And it wasn't like he was just saying, tell me your opinion. He was down in the weeds learning what it was. So I think he took it very seriously. I think he got the data, the science, the business part of it, and laid it out and analyzed it and said, I think it's time to shut it down. And I think when he did it, I think he nailed it from a date standpoint. You can argue about reopening it, but who knows whether you're right or wrong on the reopening. On the number of positive tests going up, well, it's up for two reasons. One, we're testing like crazy, but the other is our rate is higher. Now, you're right, we did get good news. We got a substantial drop in the past 2 weeks in the positive rate. And Monday, we got some really good news in the positive rate. From a standpoint of the economy, if you look at what the economy has done since he shut it down and reopened it, then I think he gets an A for timing of the events. Whether you're looking at unemployment rates, employment numbers, comparing us with the United States or whatever, we have done much better than most.
Well, I want to get into all of that, and we will as time goes on, but I want to talk about the timing. Before I go any further, I do want to say this, that from now on, I'm going to refer to you as governor throughout the rest of this interview. I believe that is proper protocol when Governor McMaster is not in the House, and he most certainly is not, and it's easier than saying Lieutenant Governor, if you don't mind.
No, I've heard that protocol too myself, but
Yeah.
I'm good with either. Whatever
Okay.
easier for you.
All right, thank you. So, Governor McMaster, let's back up from that. Early March, we had our first couple cases. I think March 6th, we had 2 cases on the very first day. And about a month after that, 1st of April, almost to the day, Governor McMaster issued a stay-at-home or work order, essentially shutting the state down. About a month later, almost to the day again, we reopened, or at least began the reopening process. Of the states that shut down, and 44 of the 50 states shut down, we were the last one to do so, along with Missouri. We were one of the first to reopen. Hindsight's 20/20. But did we close down too late? Did we open too soon? What do you think?
No, I agree with Director Ellzey wholeheartedly. I think the governor was measured, he was tempered, and he wanted to make sure not only was he looking at, right, just people's physical health, but physical health and mental health. All those things play a part in, when did we shut things down? And I prefer to say we put a pause on it because he was very deliberate in what he put a pause on, right? I talked to my other lieutenant governor counterparts from across the country, and some states, took a lot more, their governors took a lot more drastic measure. They shut down manufacturing, which really impacted their state. The governor was very focused. He listened to the experts, he looked at the data. He wanted to make sure that what we were going to put a pause on would have the biggest impact to stopping the virus, but without devastating our state. And I think that's exactly what he did. And he used the same science to open it back up, right? What we wanted to do was to make sure we had good information on how to keep workers safe, how to keep customers safe, and that's what he did. That time, that month pause gave us a lot more insight on how do we reopen things back up, How do we make sure that people stay safe once they do? How do we help our businesses? And I think what we'll find, and I think we'll probably talk about this later, was his idea of a great way to open up through Accelerate SC. And I think that was a huge home run. And I know we'll get to that a little bit later, but no, I think as much as you can know when you're dealing with an unprecedented time, I think he was very measured and very tempered, and I'm very proud of what the governor did.
I don't think there is any doubt that we all needed to get back to work. We got to make money. We got to pay bills. We got to support family. The economy just cannot grind to a halt, and we all understand that. And so I'm glad we all are back at work. We just have to be careful, right? That's right. Dan, I want to go over to you for a second. The DO motto, see it, own it, work it, do it. Do as in DEW. And basically what that means, you see a problem, you identify the problem, and you take ownership of it and you attempt to solve it. We got some really tough problems that not a lot of folks have solutions for. What would you tell small business owners right now that are searching for solutions?
Well, I'd tell them, number one, recall your employees. If you're back open, recall your employees. We recognized from the very beginning that the federal unemployment program was going to hurt the state of South Carolina from a standpoint of economic security and getting people back to work. What we had was a program that took a $15 an hour employee who earns $600 a week working. He goes home on unemployment. He gets $900 total unemployment, state and federal. And we knew right off the bat that this was going to absolutely kill the restaurants, hospitality industry, any of the people who pay in that price range. Now, if you're a BMW, it's different because you're bringing people back to much higher wages and you bring them back to great benefits. So people will happily make that transition back to work. And I think this has hurt the restaurants. It's hurt the hospitality industry. Now, that law ended last week for South Carolina. July 25th was the end of it. So the checks that go out right now will be minus the $600. Now, you can argue either way the social aspects of it, and I'm not commenting on that. I'm commenting just on the impact on businesses of having it. Congress is relooking at it. More than likely, it's going to be continued in some way, which will add to our problems. Instead of just continuing it a month ago and we could keep going, we are going to now have to reprogram the computers back up, pay back pay, maybe at a different amount to people, maybe even base it on their average earnings. We don't have any idea what it's going to take. So once Congress decides it becomes a statute, then the U.S. Department of Labor will issue us guidance saying do it this way. And that'll probably be a month from the date the law is signed, which means there's going to be a lot of back pay paid. So people will be getting big checks once again. But in any event, I do think that has had a big impact on the hospitality industry. If you look at them versus manufacturing and the term numbers of laid off people and people who are back, hospitality did not recover nearly as quickly as did the manufacturing sector.
I want to talk about manufacturing and hospitality both in a little bit more detail, and we'll do so in a minute. But first, Governor, last week the Commerce Department issued some statistics. The U.S. economy shrank an annualized 33% in the second quarter, which by far is the worst statistics we have seen come out of Commerce since they began releasing that information about 70 years ago. Nationally, exports down about 14%, imports down approximately the same. How is South Carolina faring comparatively in those same categories?
So, I think here in South Carolina, we're very lucky, right? As the governor always likes to say, we're lucky because of the people that make up our state. But we have really resilient businesses. We have the ingredients to a secret sauce that most states don't have. We have our Port of Charleston. We have 2 inland ports. I have had the pleasure of representing South Carolina in the Life Science Conference in Philadelphia, where there are companies all over the world looking to call South Carolina home because of the assets that we bring to companies that come here. So although, just like the rest of the country, I think, we are trying to recover and reopen up and people are getting their sea legs again, right, and get opening, we are poised to really get back on our feet strong. And I think our ports make us, very competitive in the world market. I think from what I hear, just buzzing around, we're going to have a lot more manufacturing coming back to our shores. that seems to be a goal across the board. And I think South Carolina is right on top of that list for where people are going to want to call home. Our Commerce Department does a phenomenal job of recruiting. We have our local, just like here in Greenville County, we have a great group of people that attract people to our area. So I think more so than anybody, South Carolinians should feel good. Our business should feel good about where we're headed. And I think we're going to get there quicker than most.
You mentioned the port. How is the port doing?
Well, because of the pause that was put on imports and exports, of course, the port is down. But that's temporary. Like we said, people are opening up, supply chains are opening up, and everything will start moving forward. Over the last week, the governor says, South Carolina's business is doing business. And so I have been around the state in Charleston. I've been in Horry County, yesterday here in the Upstate, looking at businesses that really answered the call to the president, to the governor, to fill in gaps. Lindsey Graham has talked about South Carolina. We had a lot of companies that switched production a little bit to make sure that they could fill the gap on masks and gowns and other things that we needed for our health industry, and really helped us get out of a bind here, not just in South Carolina, but nationally. And so, the governor wanted to highlight some of those companies and make sure that we got some positive wording out. In this time of negativity, let's look at South Carolina and what our companies are doing to really lead the way here during this pandemic. And so I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of those people and the people that work there, and really bring a message of thanks from the governor. Thank you for going. Thank you for switching gears. Thank you for doing what you did. And that has been so well received because people want to hear thank you, right? And they want to hear that they're appreciated, and they want to hear that their governor, their lieutenant governor has seen it. We see it, and we're very grateful and thankful.
In business, we all have to pivot in times like this. We may do things now that we didn't do before, right? We all got to find a way to make a buck. We all have to do what we got to do. And I think the manufacturing industry has certainly stepped up big time with how they have pivoted. And but let's talk unemployment for a second. Dan, it wasn't too long ago. Gosh, it was December when unemployment was at this crazy, staggeringly low, 2.3% in December. Now you fast forward 7 or 8 months, and let's see, last report was June, so May we were down 12% and change. And then just recently, your office reported some fairly good news. In June, we were down 8.7%. Give us some context. What does that really mean?
Well, it's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Obviously, the 12% unemployment is not a good number. The number, even in March, was 3.2. So we were in great shape in early March. And in March, of course, half of March was bad with layoffs. First half of March was just like we used to be. So then it goes up 2 months at around 12%, and then drops back down in the 8 range. And you say, is that good or bad? Well, nationally, it's about 11.7%. So we're really doing better than the rest of the nation, which I think goes back to when we shut down, when we opened up. I think we have come back a little bit stronger. I think that's part of it. I think manufacturing is another part of it. The manufacturers brought the people back. They furloughed for a specific amount of time, whereas many of the other industries had indefinite layoffs. But the unemployment numbers look good. The employment numbers look good. Before this thing started, we had approximately 2.3 million jobs, people working in South Carolina. That dropped way down. Now we're back to about 2.2 million. So we're about 100,000 off. But when you look at that when you're talking about 2.3 million, it's not nearly as big a number as you would think.
Well, let me push back on you a little bit. Last week, I believe there were 12,000, less than 13,000 unemployment claims. Is that correct? That's still twice as many as we had last year, right? Now, I understand where we are, okay? But if I'm playing devil's advocate and I look at what has been happening in my mind, and the 13,000 is the best we have done in 19 weeks, okay? So that's great, all right? But if I'm just going to be glass half empty for the heck of it, right? Why do we still have more than 12,000 unemployment claims now that the state is back open and everybody should be getting back to work. And we still have 12,000 claims.
Well, everybody is not back to work, obviously.
Getting back to work.
A lot of the personal care industry staggered back as they reopened. Many of them have had great difficulty. You've got a lot of self-employed people, 1099 gig workers, making more money right now than they've ever made, and it's very easy for them to stay out. They're not on South Carolina UI. We can't monitor them like we do on somebody on SCUI. That's a federal program, basically based on the honor system. And as a result of that, it's much more difficult to know when they should go back to work and whether they are back to work. But that's part of it. You got a lot of people who are just better off financially, not working. And, you know, who wouldn't rather have $900 to stay home than $600 and go to work?
And that's why you said a moment ago that it's time to recall those workers.
That's right. Well, and it's time to enforce the law, but it's very difficult on the federal program.
Yeah.
South Carolina UI is not difficult. We can get them back to work or we stop the benefits.
Right. I'm with you. Governor, 8.7% in June. I'm going to stick with that just a minute. We have always, well, I won't say always, but for quite some time, we have performed better from an unemployment perspective than the country, right? We were better than the national average when times were great, and we are still better than the national average when times are not great. Why do you think?
I think it's the people of South Carolina. I think you hear our governor say it all the time. We're very proud people. We want to work. We're very proud of what's happening here in South Carolina. I think South Carolina is different, right? We lost an entire industry that devastated our state, and we know what it's like to come back from that. And I think that makes us different. I think the businesses we have here, along with seeing these businesses, I was looking at the safety protocols that they put in place, and I can tell you, I am so proud of what our businesses have done. I was out at Michelin in the Midlands, and when you see what they've done to make sure that they've kept their employees safe, I think employees feel that, and so they feel a sense of pride to where they work, and they want to get back. They want to get back and do the right thing. And so, a lot of businesses said, just like you heard Director Ellzey talk about, how do I compete when I couldn't pay people what they're getting off? And he has said it, they have to call people back to work. And when an employee doesn't want to come back, they have to report that to do. So, because once they do, then their benefits are stopped. I think, I'm just, again, very proud to be the lieutenant governor of this state. I have a lot to brag about. Even in times like this, we have a lot to brag about in South Carolina that I don't hear other states being able to say.
On April 20th, Governor McMaster started a task force called Accelerate SC, which you were a part of. And that was made up of 30 business leaders, educators, lawmakers, community leaders, and they had a task that was basically twofold. One was to reignite the state's economy, and two was to figure out a way simultaneously to turn the coronavirus curve around. Now, none of us have quite figured that out, right? I mean, that's slow going, so let's just forget that for a second. A month later or so, 6 weeks later, after 15 public meetings, they submitted 41 recommendations over 50 pages, and I can't say I've read them all, but I've read a lot of them. How did they do?
I think we did great. I really think we hit it out of the ballpark. It's something I'm very proud to have been a part of. And I think the reason I take so much pride in Accelerate SC and just commend the governor wholeheartedly is because before I was lieutenant governor, I was a business owner.
Right.
And what I saw happen there is what I had always wished when I was sitting on the other side of that desk, right, would happen in government, is that you bring business to the table and you let them tell you what they need in guidelines. And that's what the governor did. He collaborated, which is something he talks about all the time. We got in the Restaurant Association, the Hospitality Association. We worked with manufacturers and the Manufacturing Alliance, and we said, come to the table and you tell us how you can open up safely. Let's work with DHEC to make sure that they don't have anything else to tweak, and let's put those guidelines out there for your members. So, we did that. That was a huge success. We had large business at the table, small business. We had our chambers. We had our organizations like the hospitality industry. We all came together. We brought our hospitals to the table. We brought DHEC. I mean, we just had about everybody that had a stake in the game and said, tell us what you think.
What did those public meetings look like? 15 of them?
We did. So we had meetings that were the entire Accelerate SC together, which was a much bigger meeting. And then we took it down into the different subgroups. You know, we had a subgroup called Resource, and we had a subgroup of Information where the website Accelerate SC was born from, which I think is great, with an ombudsman part of it, you know, as well as a great informational source. The governor wanted to make sure that when the Accelerate SC website was designed, that it would be a one-stop shop for our businesses, to make sure they go to one place when you're already overloaded, trying to get your business up and running, trying to get your people back. You don't need to be on your computer trying to find answers to a variety of questions, right? Put everything in one place. That was born out of that. We had, and then we had, under our resources, we brought in to make sure that our CARES money was going to be completely transparent. You know, the governor is always been very active in making sure that there was transparency in government. So he wanted to make sure that the $1.9 billion that was coming to the state of South Carolina, the people of South Carolina could see how that was being spent. So he had a whole committee put in place to talk about how would that money be spent, where would it go, who would guide that, how did we make sure we fell into the guidelines of the federal government, and that was talked about. So we had subgroups, we had the main group, and we got a lot of things done because the governor said 30 days. I want a task force that's not big government. It's 30 days. Let's get it done. And we kept moving forward, right, as it was getting done. We weren't waiting till the end of that 30 days. Guidelines were coming to us. DHEC was approving them. Governor was pushing him out and changing his mandate because he knew it was important for the people of South Carolina to get working again.
I want to come back to the CARES Act in a minute. There are several things that I want to discuss about that. But before we do, though, I want to talk about, keep mentioning about government and local governments. And last week in Charleston, our business journal in Charleston, the Charleston Regional Business Journal, had a power event where we talked with the mayors. And one of the mayors we talked with was the mayor of Charleston, John Tecklenburg. And Mayor Tecklenburg was talking about giving us some statistics on where Charleston stands right now in terms of dollars lost. He's projecting $37 million deficit this year as compared to budget. That's 15% down, right? Now, the CARES Act does not allow, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, does not allow a local government to be able to get any of those dollars back, even though they can get relief on some expenses that are coronavirus related. Do I have the right information there?
You do. So the CARES money was designed to reimburse state and local government, industries where applicable, right, for expenses they incurred up and above their normal budget due to COVID-19. That's why when we looked at the resource piece of this, we engaged a third party to make sure we fell within the guidelines of the federal government, because there will be penalties if that money is misspent. So we wanted to make sure that we had a very guided approach to how those funds, but you're absolutely correct. That money is for the reimbursement of funds dealing with COVID. So PPE, if people had to, enact broadband, right, to keep people working, let's say in their counties, that would be a part of that. Anything you could show that was not on your normal budget that you had to do to be able to adapt would be able to be reimbursed.
I can never remember exactly what the CARES Act stands for, C-A-R-E, so I'm going to read it. I won't put any, do you know?
I do, but no, I'm going to let you do it.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. I can never remember that. But it's part of, the larger coronavirus relief package that is being put out. I'm also under the impression that it is possible, and this comes from Mayor Tecklenburg, actually, that it is possible that a new bill is coming forth with the CARES Act that could potentially provide some relief dollars for local governments that are below a certain revenue figure. Is that the case?
Well, I think that's what they're looking at, on the federal side. That's been going back and forth, and we have things like the HEROES Act and all kinds of other things that are getting pushed back and forth. So we'll have to wait and see how that all shakes out, but there is talk of that happening at the federal government right now.
Dan, the hospitality industry, let's turn there. We've kind of been skirting around it here for a while, been decimated by the pandemic, right? I would assume, especially in Charleston, more so than anywhere else, even though it's, of course, all over. In terms of jobs, can you give us a bigger picture on what is going on with that industry, and how long is it going to take to pop back to where it was, or will we ever?
Well, two really good questions. How long, and will it ever? How long? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, it's a huge industry in the state of South Carolina, about 280,000 jobs before we started this. About half of them were gone. About half of those have come back. So they are making progress. A lot of them are stepping back up. But even the good, solid, financially strong restaurants are closing some locations that aren't quite doing it. They got problems getting employees in there to work. Everybody's got liability concerns. If I do this, am I going to get sued? The Accelerate SC came back with liability protection for employers, for businesses. It has not passed in South Carolina. We're one of the states that have not passed that. Hopefully the feds are going to do it, but that certainly impacts small businesses who have to sit out there and wonder, will I get sued under these different circumstances? So it's not just Charleston. I mean, Horry was devastated by the shutdown of the restaurants and basically the stay home and the stopping of travel. Now, one good thing we do have is an awful lot of our tourist industry is based on drive-in traffic. People up and down the eastern seaboard who can drive here in a day. So we didn't take the hits that the Las Vegas types of locations did, where almost all of it is fly-in. And that's why we did recover more quickly than they did.
Tourism is still a $25 billion industry in South Carolina, right? A couple $1 billion in taxes. How is tourism looking?
So,
Probably nothing right now.
No, I mean, when you talk to Dwayne Parrish, who, is our director of PRT, a wonderful guy, we're doing better than most. I mean, South Carolina, in the scheme of things, is above the national average. So that's good news for our people at the coast, right? Whether they own a hotel or a restaurant or a small amusement park attraction. And I think a lot of it has to do with what Director Ellzey was talking about, is that we are in a good location where people can continue to come and drive and not feel like they have to get on a plane if that is not something they feel comfortable doing. And so they've been able to bounce back a little bit more. And I think, good leadership always helps. I think Dwayne Parrish has done a great job in helping our hospitality industry, which, as you said, is a huge part of our South Carolina economy. But we have a beautiful state. Some things that people other than the country don't have to offer, right? As the governor would say, you could have breakfast at the ocean and you have dinner in the mountains. And there's very few states that can give you that. And so, I was part of the SC7 expedition. I was popping in and out of it where I could, highlighting our state parks and the 7 wonders of South Carolina. We have a lot of resources. June, the month of June, brought the highest revenue from people going to our state parks. So I think we might see a little shift since it's been recorded.
You're kidding.
No. Our state parks people have wanted to get out and get fresh air. Where you didn't want to be locked up in their homes, right? So go out and get some sunshine and breathe fresh air and hike those trails.
Interesting.
And it continues to be. June mimicked it, and I was on the phone with Director Parrish this morning, who believes that July will bring in those same numbers. They're seeing record high reserve rates for next year. So we have some of the most beautiful parks. Tom Mulligan, who has climbed the highest mountains and dove the deepest places, will tell you that you don't have to go to Mount Kilimanjaro to see a beautiful scenery. You can go right up to the Sassafras Mountains right here in the Upstate, and that's one of the places we started that expedition and ended down in Charleston. So I think that brought a lot of awareness that, it's not all about being inside. We have a lot of great things that we can be doing, and people are getting out and doing it.
That's good info. I did not know that. I'm glad I learned something new today. Thank you. Dan, before you joined Dew, you were a partner at Fisher Phillips.
That's
Attorney. You're still an attorney, of course. Are you practicing at all?
No, I'm not. I am.
You don't have time to do that?
I am. You mean practicing for money? No, I'm not. I retired from the practice of law and I withdrew from the partnership. I had been part-time for 10 years, still very active, but anyway, I'm retired from that and I have to resist the urge to do lawyerly type things. I still will read a statute when I hear somebody's interpretation of it if it sounds a little off to me.
Right.
But no, I am a manager now. We got a whole staff of lawyers who know far more about this than I do.
I hear you. Fisher Phillips, one of the largest U.S. law firms that represent management and labor and employment. The reason I brought it up, though, was because you had experience in the manufacturing industry while you were at Fisher Phillips, including some workforce development programs and that kind of thing. So I would imagine that might play a little part in why you might have taken the current job. Talk to me about manufacturing from your perspective, unemployment-wise, what's going on in the industry. Just talk about it a little bit.
Well, so manufacturing was, I was a management labor lawyer, and there's a difference between labor and employment. I did union-related stuff, representing companies who had union-related issues. So we are very, very concerned about workforce development there. The vast bulk of my clients were manufacturing, and the vast bulk of them were automotive, whether it was assembly, like Toyota, or parts manufacturers like Dana Corporation, Federal Mogul, many of the huge parts manufacturers throughout the United States. So I knew manufacturing. I've spent more time in manufacturing plants than I have in courtrooms, for darn sure. And I have a huge appreciation for it. Manufacturing in South Carolina is vital. It is the most important thing. You look at the number of jobs, and it's high, 260,000 roughly, but those are good jobs, high-paying jobs. Those are jobs people hop off unemployment to get back to. Good benefits, good management. Some of the manufacturers in the state even took the extra step of joining into a special program that we have, entering a formal written plan where they are allowed to pay employees extra money who are on furlough without it affecting their unemployment benefits. And they have to waive certain rights when they do that. But a number of them did it. So it was just outstanding group of manufacturers in the state of South Carolina. They took a hit. Particularly the big ones to begin with. You could see there, a lot of it was supply chain, logistics issues, can't get parts in from wherever. But most of them were time-measured furloughs. You're gone for 2 weeks, you're gone for 3 weeks, as opposed to indefinite, which is a totally different thing in the mind of an employee, and under the unemployment laws, you're treated differently. So they brought most of those employees back. There's still a number of them that are out. More of the small manufacturers now that are having the layoffs. Unfortunately, what we're also seeing are some shutdowns. Probably not COVID related at all, but business consolidations. We're going to see that. And
any more than what is usual?
Oh yeah, it's more than what is usual. Anytime we have that, we're either going to be the winner or the loser. They consolidate to here, or they consolidate somewhere else. And that has so many considerations that go into play that it's really hard to say what caused it. But manufacturing will bounce back. This is just such a strong manufacturing state. I used to love, I practiced all over America. I spent 99% of my time outside the state of South Carolina. I love to ask my Midwestern clients, buddies, what's the most industrialized state in America? And they'd say, well, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, maybe. Well, it wasn't any of them. For many years, it was the state of South Carolina. On a per capita basis, we had more people working in manufacturing than any other state. And now it goes back and forth with North Carolina. But we are highly industrialized. We live on manufacturing.
Yeah.
And it's been good to us.
You talk about manufacturing consolidation, which makes me think of Boeing, Governor. So there was some information here recently that said that it's possible that the Boeing plant in Washington State and the Boeing plant in North Charleston could potentially consolidate. Means we could win big or lose big, I suppose. Is there truth to that? What do you know?
Well, that made me, I was just thinking about consolidation when Director Ellzey talked about that. And I think what I know is that we are Team South Carolina. And that is something that isn't duplicated anywhere else in the country. the way our state leaders work with our federal leaders, work with our local leaders, we give something to our businesses that they don't get anywhere else. So I think just like when I was sitting on the business side of the economy and not as lieutenant governor, you want to make sure that you are best poised to give people what they're not going to get anywhere else. And what I'm confident is that South Carolina can give to businesses what nobody else in the country can. And I think put head to head with any other state, I think South Carolina is going to fare very well.
So Boeing's not going anywhere?
Not if this governor has anything to do about it. I think Governor McMaster will do everything he can to make sure that Boeing is happy in their South Carolina home.
All right, well, we'll all have our fingers crossed. Speaking of jobs that we don't want to go anywhere, Dan, are there any other kinds of jobs that maybe have gone away that we don't expect to get back?
Well, there are certainly things that have changed, and we've all seen that. Even in a restaurant, so much of the business now is pickup. So you don't have the wait staff inside that you used to. But at the same time, you got a lot of delivery services. So some of those jobs lost to wait staff are now delivery services. You got the retail industry, which was already reeling as we headed into this with the shift from brick and mortar to the e-commerce model of buying things, and that was, how many people did Amazon hire during the COVID crisis? And that's going to continue, but everybody thinks about it as Amazon and a Belk store, but really there's a whole world out there of transportation, distribution, warehousing, and logistics that goes into it that's different, whether it's e-commerce versus brick and mortar. So I think we're going to see changes everywhere. IT. We look around at what's going to be big in South Carolina over the next few years. I don't think there's any doubt it's IT. You got a kid that wants a good job, whether they go to college or not, get yourself a certificate in information technology or cybersecurity. You are going to have a good job in the next few years. So I don't know what's going away and what's staying, but things are changing. There's no doubt about that.
And I think change is good for everybody. I think it evolves us. It's like Director Ellzey said, we just had an announcement here with Walmart putting in a new distribution center. South Carolina will continue to fare well, and I think we have really good leadership. Like I said, the governor is a business-focused governor, so is our Department of Commerce. And I think as things go away, just because we're evolving, I think there's a lot new coming, and I think South Carolina is where that's going to want to call home.
Speaking of changing, schools. Last week, Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman announced that about 35 or 40 more school districts are going to be reopened. I think it's around 70, 75 total now, something like that. We got to get these kids back to school, right? I mean, that impacts the economy as well. You don't have kids in school, some parents can't work, right? And then they may not be able to afford daycare, or they may not be able to get daycare. So where do we stand with schools?
So you heard our governor say he would like every school district to have two options. He would like face-to-face instruction for parents and children who need that. And he would like a virtual option for children who may have underlying health conditions that parents don't feel comfortable. We have heard from the Board of Pediatrics who have said that kids need face-to-face interaction. We have heard accounts that it's very hard. We've seen from other countries that have come back. Spread from child to child is very low, and child to teacher is very low. And there's a whole lot of things we have to think about, too, when it comes to education. There are things beyond teaching a child. It's, food, right? There's a lot of children who count on schools to be fed every day. Sima Virta came up with the vice president from CMA and talked about the fact that CMA gives all kinds of programs to in-school children for dental care and eye care that they can't receive if they're not in school. We know that teachers are our biggest reporters of child abuse. Child abuse reports have gone down 50% since we have started children studying virtual from home. You hear our law enforcement say sometimes home is not a safe place for a child. Mental health. Children need to be with their peers. It's what we all need. And that's another, learning and growing. This superintendent of Anderson 5 was with the vice president. The governor hosted the vice president and second lady. He had educators at a roundtable session. And the superintendent of Anderson 5 was very articulate and spoke very passionately from the heart, saying that if children's education is interrupted for 2 years, the dropout rates will go up exponentially. And he said that is what's keeping him up at night. And the fact that in that age group, from kindergarten to third grade, and possibly up into fourth, if you have a child that struggles with reading, he said most of us don't probably even remember how we were taught to read. And he was right, because I tried to think about it for a minute, and I don't remember, because teachers were doing that along the way. And it's very hard to do virtually, and it's very hard for parents to kind of jump in on. And so I think the governor was completely right. I agree with him wholeheartedly. I'm a mom. And with that, my youngest is 13, and I can tell you I'm very blessed that he doesn't have any learning challenges. But we did at the end of last year. I mean, it was just very difficult for him, for a child who normally does very well in school. So as a mom, I can say I completely stand behind the governor.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to lose my senior year in high school, though. I tell you that. All the things that that happen any year, right? But can kids go back to school, and can they go back safely? I mean, how are you going to social distance on a bus? Are we going to have some kids go 2 days a week and some go 3 days a week and use our buses so we don't have as many kids on the bus? How's that going to work?
Well, I think we have a lot of experts. DHEC is chiming in on how that can be safely done. I think with virtual options, and some parents will take advantage of those virtual options, I think some of that will probably be cut down of how many kids will be riding a bus. But I think DHEC has all those things in mind. I think there's a lot of districts that have come together to put their heads together to figure out the best way to do that. But I believe, just like everybody else, and so does the governor, as he has said, it can be safely done. The federal government gave, I think it was $126 million to the state superintendent of education to make sure that that could get done safely, that they would have, and school districts would have the resources to be able to do that.
Good information. Thank you. Thank you both. I do want to end with one more question, though. Our readers, and hence our viewers, are mostly high-level business executives. 80% of our readers are a business owner, a C-level exec, a president, or vice president, all across South Carolina. If you could give them advice, small business owners, medium business owners, C-level execs that are running those type of companies, give them a piece of advice. Dan, I'll start with you.
Well, think about changes in jobs. Changes in jobs means we're going to have to do more training. Historically, South Carolina and most states have done very little training of existing employees. Now, if they're teaching them a new job at the plant or something like that, they do it. But in terms of analyzing what's going to happen to the number of people we got working in distribution and thinking about what's going to happen to them, that's going to be required in the future. And we're going to have to think about the training. And we're going to have to think about doing what the workforce people call incumbent training. So look at what you got. That's better for the most part than what's outside. Train them for those jobs that you know you're going to have, and train the people who are in the jobs you know you're going to lose. Now, the federal government has paid for very little and encouraged very little of that in the past. But I think it's something that South Carolina is going to have to think about, even if we do it with our own money as opposed to federal money.
Governor.
Well, I agree with Director Ellzey. I think training is very important. But I'm a glass is half full kind of person. You were talking about being glass half empty before. I'm a glass is half full, and I think there's going to be a world of opportunity that's going to come out of this. I think, as I said earlier, I think a lot of manufacturers are going to look to bring some of their products back on the U.S. shores. And I think that's opportunity. If you're an entrepreneur like I was, that's opportunity. What are you now getting from somewhere that you were impacted with when COVID started. It was something our president talked about early on when he took office, is how do we repatronize and how do we get jobs back to our soil? And I think this is a good time to think about that. If
You think they're coming back?
I think they're going to come back, and I think it's those entrepreneurs that found that are going to find these holes now, right? They've experienced them. I've talked to a lot of people who said, I never thought I'd have a problem getting that widget, right? And now I realize how much that really stopped me from production. And I think they're going to say, I wonder if I could start this new line right here that will supplement me buying that widget from somewhere across the pond. And so I think that brings a lot of opportunity. So I say, don't have to look really far than your own backyard to see how you were impacted, and how do you make sure that if something like this ever happens again, your business will not be impacted again. And I think training and opportunity is the way to do that.
Lieutenant Governor Pam Evette, Executive Director Dan Ellzey, thank you for both joining us. Appreciate it. I'm sure our viewers do too. That concludes another episode of Coping with COVID. You can see all of our episodes on our YouTube page. We'll see you next time.